pretty interesting book, and it certainly deals very much with motorcycle maintenance. The subtitle is An Inquiry into Values, so it's obvious that he's after more than just motorcycle maintenance. He's after issues of quality, issues of meaning, what things really mean at their depth, and issues of caring and love. He has gone on this trip, or is going on this trip, with his son Chris, who is 10, and his two friends, John and Sylvia Sutherland. And early on in the trip, it becomes obvious that he has an issue with John Sutherland. And let me just read a piece that describes that. He says, "It began with what seemed to be a minor difference of opinion between John and me on a matter of small importance. How much should one maintain one's own motorcycle? It seems natural and normal to me to make use of the small toolkit and instruction booklet supplied with each machine, and keep it tuned and adjusted myself. John demurs. He says he prefers to let a competent mechanic take care of these things so that they can be done right. Neither viewpoint is unusual, and this minor difference would never have become magnified if we didn't spend so much time riding together and sitting in country roadhouses, drinking beer and talking about whatever comes to mind." He goes on to say that he feels as if John's view of the motorcycle is a romantic one. John's view is similar to opening up a magazine and seeing this picture of the beautiful, shiny motorcycle and thinking that that is the motorcycle. On the other hand, Robert Persig's view of the motorcycle is that it's a living and breathing machine, if you will, that one must understand its meaning, and the way you understand its meaning is by reading the instruction book, the parts manual, the repair manual, and carrying along a small toolkit so that should you get into trouble with your motorcycle, you can fix it and maintain it. Well, Robert Persig, it turns out later, has had some problems with his son. There's a troubled relationship between him and his son Chris. And he's, throughout the book, occasionally he muses about, he thinks seriously about this issue of the relationship between him and his son. And at one point he says as to himself, "I'm trying to come up with a shortcut to living right. The real cycle you're working on is a cycle called yourself." Of course, the meaning of this is that we all have motorcycles that we have to maintain. We have to maintain the motorcycle of our relationship with our family. We have to maintain the motorcycle of our own bodies. We have to maintain, in particular, the spiritual motorcycle that we have. It's easy enough, and I know this probably more than anyone else, it's easy enough to close your eyes and think that your spirituality is just going to roll along with you. Whereas in fact, we have tools that we can use to help maintain our spiritual motorcycle. The ones that we use ourselves would be, and when we're alone or with a small number of people, would be prayer, Bible study, study of other religious texts, thinking about our relationships. But the bigger part, perhaps, of most of our spiritual motorcycle is maintained or worked on or ridden, if you will, right here at St. Stephen's. And in particular on Sunday morning, where we come together with one another. We have beautiful music, a wonderful music program. We have the beautiful stained glass windows. And speaking of meaning, of course, nearly every Sunday, either Father Max or Father Steve takes one of the lessons and explains its meaning to us. What is meant by this, sometimes rather obscure parables, or even parables that seem to be almost a little bit embarrassing. So that's a very worthwhile thing. There's more to our relationship with St. Stephen's Church and ourselves than just this service, however. For example, there's a community sense of community that we get when we don't stream right out the door at the end of the service, but we have a cup of coffee and have a piece of fruit or a donut and meet and chat with the folks around us. This is, in a sense, this is where St. Stephen's is. St. Stephen's isn't really this church. St. Stephen's exists in the spirit of the people and the staff who maintain St. Stephen's. So we maintain, at the same time we're maintaining our personal spiritual motorcycle, we're also maintaining the motorcycle of St. Stephen's. Besides the things I've just mentioned, of course, we have the outreach program. Every time you donate food or clothing or money or time to the outreach program, whether it be the Hour Center or some of the other ministries in Longmont, you're maintaining the Longmont motorcycle. When you give to the Haiti Project, you're maintaining the motorcycle of the world. So this matter of maintaining the spiritual motorcycle goes beyond just personal prayer. And in fact, we have a new ministry booklet, which you can pick up copies out in the narthex. It has over 30 different ministries that are described in here, ways that you can get involved in St. Stephen's ministries if you're not already involved. And I must admit that the ink is dry, but there are errors that creep into a book like this, starting from the moment that the type is set, and they're my fault. So as you find errors or as you need corrections because things have changed in your program, please let me know, because I can print up some correction sheets and put in there, and we'll do so. You've seen perhaps people between the services wandering around and looking up and looking down and feeling different things, noticing that the handrail's a bit loose, noticing that the front pew seems to give too much when you lean against it. This is the infrastructure committee that's, for the first time in, I guess, a long time, looking at the details of what the infrastructure of this building, the building and grounds, needs, where the problems are, where maintenance work needs to be done. And so this committee is pulling together the list of things that need to be done. And they'll be showing up on small cards out in the narthex at some point, so that people who want to get involved can take one of these cards, look at what's involved, tools, time, talents that are involved in doing this work. This committee indeed was composed of a number of vestry members, but also had some additional parishioners. Barb Smith's been involved, very much so. I guess Kirk Ray has been involved. Anyone else here who's I've forgotten? So we have this effort going on, a new and fresh one, to keep the motorcycle of this building and grounds maintained. And it goes beyond that, of course. It also takes money to keep the church running. Not only to heat it and light it and make the repairs, but also to pay the salaries of our staff, to get music for the music program. The list goes on. So this is the stewardship brochure that you will be getting in the pledge card, that you will be getting in the mail. If you're on the mailing list, if you're not, copies will be back on one of the tables in the narthex. Pick one up and read it. Robert Persig, when they're going through or near a small town in Oregon, Grants Pass, when he hears a bang and a clatter and an alarming bunch of noise coming from his motorcycle. And he ascertains that it's the chain guard, the bracket of which is broken, allowing the chain guard to be grinding against the chain. This is not a good thing. So he, with his son, of course, limps into Grants Pass, and he gets Chris installed in a hotel, gets him settled, and then he goes in search of a motorcycle repair shop. And he finds one. The problem is that the parts guy tells him that he has to stock this part and it could be weeks. This is the early 70s. This is before UPS would give you an overnight delivery. So he's looking at a week or more to get this chain guard if he can get it then. So of course he understands how the meaning, if you will, of the chain guard. So he goes in search of a welder. He thinks he can get a small piece fabricated. He can have the chain guard welded back together. And indeed, he finds a welder and spends several pages describing the enormous talent and care of this particular welder in welding together the chain guard. And the good news is that it is well done, and he goes on his way for the rest of the trip. 3,500 years ago, Moses goes up the mountain to God's welding shop. And after 40 days or whatever it is, he comes back with 10 tools to help maintain your motorcycle, the motorcycle of the Israelites. And those 10 tools, I'm going to be presumptuous, so excuse me here, but I think 8 of the 10 tools have a real problem. And the problem is, they are thou shalt not, and not thou what thou shalt. It's as if you buy a tool at Sears and you get it home and open up the manual, and all it says is what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't operate it while you're standing in water, and so on. But you get to the end, and it doesn't tell you what you can do with that tool. So 1,500 years later, Jesus is again bedeviled by one of the Pharisees, as we heard in the lesson today, asking him, what's the great commandment? And Jesus, I guess, maybe he was ready for this one, says, I'm the Lord thy God, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two hang all the laws and the prophets. So in one shot, Jesus has given us 2 new shiny tools, if you will, to supplement those 10. And they're still in use today. The instructions to use them are very easy. But they don't allow things that the 10 Commandments might have allowed, like hatred, like malice, like dirty tricks, dirty political tricks. I was going to Janet, a little event that Janet Stricker held yesterday, and I was going up 119 and a guy cut me off. And I had to quick reach for number 2 to deal with my feelings about that action. And that tool is always with you. You may keep it sort of under the seat, but it's at the ready should you need that number 2 tool. So, when you go to fill out your pledge card, I hope that you will take both of these tools in hand and use them to help you make your decision about your pledge this year.